I was halfway through reheating my coffee for the third time when I got the ping that changed everything. Not a phone call, not a shout down the hall. Just a Teams message that read, "Can you send me your notes on the onboarding process? I want to streamline it." From Matt, the new hiring manager. The one with the $200 haircut and the personality of a LinkedIn post. I stared at the message, then at the cup spinning in the microwave, and muttered, "Jesus Christ. Not again? Let me back up. I've been at the company, let's call it Northwell, for 17 years. I don't just know where the skeletons are buried, I gave some of them CPR. I built the global training division from scratch when it was just an idea scribbled on a post-it during a conference call. Back then, no one cared about cross-departmental alignment or brand-consistent onboarding. Now it's a multi-million-dollar flagship program with Fortune-level clients. But when they merged us with the junior ops team last quarter, they asked me to take a step back and let fresh leadership emerge. I did, I nodded, I smiled. I agreed to play mentor and watch from the cheap seats. I should have known better. The first red flag was the schedule Matt sent out, color-coded like a unicorn, threw up on an Excel sheet with 5 back-to-back meetings labeled vision planning, workflow philosophy, and my personal favorite, disruption mindset sync. I told myself it was harmless. Let him play thought leader. Give him enough rope, you know? But then he started renaming things. Our client-verified ramp and retain program, now it's fast-track future, like some off-brand protein shake. And just a quick pause, if you've made it this far, do me a solid. Hit that follow button and toss us a like. 90% of folks listen without subscribing. It really helps the team keep the coffee hot and the chaos documented. Appreciate you. Anyway, I tried not to care. I really did. I focused on transition planning, making sure people didn't fall through the cracks. I met with every new hire, gave them the soft landings I wished someone had given me back in the day. And then Matt, in his infinite wisdom, started reshuffling reporting lines. Quietly at first, then openly. He removed Priya from her team lead position and replaced her with some guy from his last company who once hosted a hustle mindset podcast. Priya had onboarded 12 major accounts last year, but apparently she lacked dynamic energy. Translation: she didn't laugh at Matt's jokes. Same thing happened with Jerome, our data lead. Suddenly his login credentials didn't work. When he asked IT, they said they had a ticket from Matt to sunset redundant access. I bit my tongue. I played the role, smiled through meetings while Matt mispronounced acronyms and made vague threats about raising the bar. I figured legal would catch up eventually. But then I saw the client email, forwarded to me by accident. Subject: legacy process owners the body. Don't worry about Ashley, she's more like a support historian. I'm streamlining the onboarding verticals personally. A support historian, like I was some museum greeter for dead workflows. I stared at it for a good minute, then I screenshotted it, saved it twice, printed a copy and slipped it into my desk drawer next to my emergency Reese's stash. I didn't say a word to him, I just kept documenting, watching, waiting. Because here's the thing about playing the long game, you don't need to shout. You don't need to throw tantrums or start turf wars in Slack. You just need to know where the lines are drawn and who still holds the pen. And what Matt didn't know is that after a quiet little compliance audit last year, my name had been added to the board's contract review list. Quietly, permanently, all I needed was one email, one chain, one misstep from him. And God bless him, he delivered. Matt Matheson strutted into our Monday kickoff like he'd just been cast in a reboot of The Apprentice. Tight suit, no socks, pointy shoes, and the kind of handshake that makes you want to wash your soul. He started the meeting with a PowerPoint titled Culture Reset, Scaling with Swagger. I wish I were kidding. The man said synergy 5 times before we'd even opened the shared doc. I watched the interns nod like bobbleheads while my coffee went cold again. You ever watch someone try to take over a kitchen they've never cooked in? That was Matt. Loud, fast, and hellbent on rearranging every drawer without asking where the knives were. Within a week, he had restructured 3 of our program tracks, ones I personally built from scratch over a decade. He rebranded our onboarding modules from clear, client-tested names to vague nonsense like Ignite, Journey, and Level Up on-ramps. The feedback forms came back blank because no one knew what they'd just learned. I didn't come in swinging. I asked for one-on-one. Polite, curious. Hey Matt, just wanted to sync on some of the changes to the global training side. I've got a lot of background that might help inform direction. He smirked, not smiled, smirked. Oh, that's sweet. I appreciate your legacy insights, but we're trying to future-proof the culture. Legacy insights. I took a breath and nodded. Totally understand. Just let me know how I can help keep things consistent for client expectations. Some of these naming conventions are in contracts. That got a blink out of him. Contracts? That magical word people like Matt think only lawyers worry about. He didn't follow up. Instead, he started pushing changes into shared documentation without version control. Whole process maps deleted. Revision histories mysteriously vanished. He posted final drafts of handbooks that hadn't been reviewed, let alone vetted by legal or compliance. The worst part, he CC'd our external partners on some of those updates, acting like everything was aligned. I pinged HR. They gave me the verbal equivalent of a shrug. It's part of the merger transition. Let's give new leadership some space to define their approach. Right? Define their approach by bulldozing the foundation. A few days later, I got the email that made my eyelid twitch. Forwarded by mistake from a client I'd worked with for 6 years. Subject, Program Inquiry Re, Ashley M. I scrolled down to find Matt's original message. And there it was, plain as day. Don't worry, Ashley isn't involved in the new structure. She's legacy support staff, mostly here for context. I'm driving the new vision personally. Legacy support staff. I sat with that for a moment. Let it simmer like bad chili. This wasn't just some inflated ego flailing around in a new role. He was rewriting the narrative, erasing my name from my own damn work, and broadcasting it externally. That right there crossed a line. I didn't forward that email to legal yet. Instead, I started my own document, titled Misalignment Log GTD Transition. Dry, boring, perfect. I logged every version he deleted, every meeting where he contradicted existing policy, every instance where he referred to contractual materials as suggestions. I wasn't venting, I was building a timeline. I tried one last time to reach out. Dropped a note in his calendar, quick sync on GTD assets and compliance dependencies. He declined it, didn't reschedule. Just shot me a message back, appreciate the context, but I've got it covered. That was the moment I knew we weren't in the same game. See, I've learned over the years that some men don't want collaboration, they want clearance. They want you out of the way, politely and permanently. And they wrap that goal in words like agility and culture shift and fresh perspective. Matt didn't want insight. He wanted an empty room where he could talk uninterrupted. And what he didn't understand was this: I don't raise my voice. I don't barge into meetings. I don't throw fits and reply all chains. But I do know exactly who does care about contract language, scope misrepresentation, and leadership misstatements made to external partners. And unlike Matt, don't need permission to loop them in. The email came in at 6:13 a.m. on a Thursday. Subject line, clarifying scope of authority. I had sent him a polite message the night before, just after reviewing yet another round of program enhancements he'd pushed live without so much as a glance at the original playbooks. I kept my tone measured. Hey Matt, noticing a few deviations in process alignment. Happy to sync and walk through historical context. I'd help smooth things with compliance. I'd even ended with a smiley. A damn smiley. What I got back was 3 sentences of pure arrogant vinegar. I don't care who you are or what you used to do. The old way is gone. Please focus on support tasks and let leadership lead. And just for spice, he'd CC'd 6 people: his VP, a few department heads, and the COO's nephew, the one who hired him. No context, no kindness, just a digital slap in front of an audience, like he was throwing down a gauntlet in the middle of the food court. I stared at my screen, took a long sip of coffee that had gone tepid in my hands. I didn't feel angry, not exactly. It was something quieter, something heavier. I reread it, then once more, just to be sure I wasn't imagining the gall. Then I opened a new message. No rant, no dramatic preamble. Legal counsel at NWC Group subject. Conduct plus contractual concerns GTD transition. I dropped the thread in, top to bottom. No editorializing. Just hi team, looping you in on a developing issue scope clarity and potential risk exposure with external partners. Flagging for review. I BCC'd myself. Twice. Then I opened 3 old folders on my desktop, ones most people had long forgotten existed. The first was called Policy Integration, Notes 2017. Inside were the original memos that laid out the decision authority boundaries for the training division. Boring as beige paint, but important. The second was Board Audit Mins 2022. That one had the paragraph I knew Matt didn't know existed, where compliance officially requested that I be listed as a review stakeholder for all client-facing process updates tied to onboarding. The third was the juiciest, Q1 contract rollover notes. Inside, detailed language that tied program naming conventions and step sequences directly to SLAs with 3 of our biggest clients. I BCC'd those folders to myself in a zipped archive, titled the email, reference GTD structure auth internal only, sent it to my personal archive address, one I'd used to prep decks before flights. Then I shut my laptop. Didn't respond to Matt. Didn't reply all with a fiery monologue about respect, contribution, or tenure. Didn't stomp into anyone's office demanding justice. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, made a fresh pot of coffee, and texted my friend Sandra in legal, heads up. You'll see something in your inbox flagged GTD. You'll like it or hate it. Maybe both. She responded 3 minutes later with a skull emoji and we should talk Monday. By lunch. The email thread had been opened 6 times by legal and 2 by internal risk. Matt probably thought he won the exchange. Probably strutted around the office bragging about how he put a relic in her place. Maybe he even cracked a joke about old dogs, new tricks. But here's what Matt didn't understand. This wasn't a high school debate. It wasn't about who shouted loudest or flexed the biggest org chart. This was a compliance-governed structure inside a publicly visible corporation with liability thresholds and fiduciary oversight. He wanted to establish dominance. I wanted to establish documentation. And unlike him, I knew exactly how to play this game. Because sometimes the most devastating reply is no reply at all, just a quiet CC to the right inbox. And a system that does the yelling for you. Monday came, so did the meeting. Sandra, a longtime contact in legal, met me in one of the smaller conference rooms, the kind with sad carpeting and that one flickering light panel that gives you a headache after 10 minutes. She didn't bother with small talk. Just shut the door, flipped her notebook open, and said, "How deep is it?" I slid a printout across the table. He's assigning deliverables to a third-party contractor that doesn't even exist in procurement's vendor portal. Zero clearance. Zero so. She blinked. Who's signing the payment requests? Best guess, I said. No one. He's pushing it through ops as advisory alignment support. He renamed the PO field headers to avoid triggering review. She didn't swear, Sandra was too polished for that, but her pen tapped once hard against the notepad. And the clients? Confused, I said. One of them sent me a welcome packet for a program I never wrote. He used my old deck template, stripped the legal disclosures, and swapped in a Canva logo. She exhaled. "You have everything documented?" "I'm not new," I said. She almost smiled. That night, I didn't go home angry. I went home busy. See, I've learned that when HR won't touch something with a 10-foot pole, when they start saying things like, "Let's not get in the middle of evolving org dynamics," it means someone higher up is shielding the wreckage. And when they shield it, they think it'll blow over. It won't. So I started building the file, a quiet one no one could accuse me of weaponizing because every entry was a question. In one shared doc, where Matt had replaced the phased integration plan with a two-sentence vision statement, I added a comment. "Can you confirm client approval for these updates?" Original scope included phased benchmarks tied to Q4 metrics. No reply. In the Slack channel where he posted a cheerleading GIF with the caption, "We're revamping the onboarding journey," I replied simply, "Will legal be re-reviewing client-facing content before distribution?" Radio silence. I didn't argue, didn't escalate. Just saved screenshots and timestamp logs to my archive folder titled GTD Clarifications Q3. Innocent, non-confrontational, but deadly in sequence. Meanwhile, checked the contractor names he'd been dropping on calls. Tony from Strategy, Bethany from Engagement. I searched the vendor list. Nothing. Not a single onboarding doc, W-9, or NDA on file. I sent procurement a polite, open-ended email. "Quick confirm, are any new GTD-aligned vendors pending intake or approval this cycle?" They replied, "No current entries. Please flag if someone's operating ahead of formal registration." I started. Moved it to the critical threads subfolder. Every day, Matt made it easier. One day, he uploaded a slide deck for an internal pitch. It included client logos, all of them, zero usage rights. I left one comment just noting, "Brand approvals not on file for external usage. Should we submit request?" No edit, no reply, but I saw the read receipt. I started keeping copies of everything, not in a cover your ass way, in a line up the darts on the board way, because I knew what Sandra was doing in parallel. Quietly checking Matt's hiring paperwork, his scope docs, the dotted lines between his supposed authority and actual authorization. And every time I thought about going scorched earth, blasting him in an email or yanking control of the training drive, I reminded myself, this isn't about me winning an argument. It's about letting him keep walking off a cliff he doesn't know is there. You don't have to push when the ledge is already crumbling. You just document where the cracks are. And when the collapse happens, you point and say, "It's all in the file." The message came through just after lunch, subject line, "Team Realignment Update." Matt had posted it in the All GTD channel, like a kid showing off his finger paint masterpiece. His wording was pure startup buzzword stew, in line with our acceleration goals. We're streamlining the GTD leadership model to emphasize agile impact. Effective immediately, several team lead roles will sunset to make space for leaner, more forward-facing hires. Sunset, like my people were beach vacations and not the backbone of the entire client onboarding pipeline. I read it 3 times, then again slower. He had axed 3 senior leads, Jerome, Priya, and Leela, without even pretending to consult me. These weren't paper pushers. These were the people who trained regional directors, maintained scope to delivery compliance, and kept the client SLAs breathing. And now they were just gone, no heads up, no consultation, just sunset to make space. Jerome called me 30 minutes later, voice calm but tight. He told me my role was duplicative to the new vision, he said. Didn't even look up from his laptop. Said there was a place for me if I wanted to pivot into enablement support. I said nothing for beat. "Don't take any further meetings," I finally replied, and screenshot everything. "We're not done here," he paused. "You've got a plan?" "Oh yeah," I said. I just hadn't needed to use it until now. That night, 3 emails came in from long-term clients. One asked why their onboarding module was suddenly missing mandatory compliance sections. Another wanted to know who Tony S. was and why he'd been assigned as their training lead without notice or credentials. The third was a classic corporate bombshell. "Please confirm whether the new materials supersede our contractually agreed-upon process map. Our legal team has requested documentation." I didn't respond immediately. I forwarded all 3 to compliance. An hour later, I got a ping from Carla, my quiet but lethal ally in compliance. She didn't bother with a greeting. Do you know you were removed from the scope sign-off chain for the Thompson contract? I blinked. No, I built that scope. Yeah, she said, but your name's not on the last two versions. Matt submitted the latest SOW without your sign-off. The system flagged it when he tried to close the deal without a supporting risk analysis. Who's looped in? Not legal. Yet. But I pulled the audit trail. Your name was manually deleted from the stakeholder list in DocuSign. My hand curled so tightly around my pen it snapped in two. That was the moment it stopped being about pride. This wasn't just a turf war or some bad onboarding circus. This was exposure, liability, the kind of internal misstep that could spiral into contractual breach if a client got spooked or a regional partner decided to review their deliverables with a fine-tooth comb. And Matt was still out here posting gifs in Slack like he was running a youth soccer team and not $1 million onboarding engine. So I opened a new email. 2. Legal counsel at NWC Group CC. Compliance reports at NWC Group. Board liaison at NWC Group subject. Formal request role clarity and scope governance. Urgent body. Team. Due to recent changes in GTD leadership assignments and stakeholder exclusion in key scope reviews, I am formally requesting a session to clarify authority boundaries, compliance dependencies, and contract impact mitigation. Please advise on earliest availability. We'll prepare documentation ahead of session. Best, Ashley Monroe Director, Global Training Division. I hit send. Then I opened a new document, Scope Deviations Q3 Impact Summary. I began logging every instance where Matt had touched process flow without authorization. I included client names, contract reference codes, and delivery risk levels. I highlighted the SOW where my name had been erased. I attached Carla's flagged audit trail and Jerome's offboarding notice. Because here's the truth, I didn't want the spotlight, never had. I liked the quiet power of precision, of knowing the process better than anyone else in the room. But this wasn't about personality anymore. This was about risk. And if the company wanted to know who was protecting the damn foundation while Matt played house with contractors and Canva slides, I'd show them, page by page, clause by clause, no yelling, no drama, just receipts. It started with a calendar invite titled Next Chapter Conversation. HR always has a way with euphemisms, don't they? You don't get fired anymore. You evolve beyond your current scope. You don't get replaced, you embrace legacy transitions. It's all a polite pat on the back before the shove out the door. The meeting was short, polished. They brought in Megan from Talent Strategy, which is code for someone who wasn't here when you built the damn place. She smiled like she was practicing for a dental brochure. Ashley, she said gently, we wanted to acknowledge your incredible contributions over the years. Truly. And with all the exciting directional shifts in GTD, we thought it might be time to discuss how best to honor your legacy while making space for new leadership energy. I nodded slowly. So this is the part where you sunset me. Megan blinked, surprised I'd said it out loud. I wouldn't put it that way, she stammered. I would, I said. But don't worry, I'm not here to fight it, that threw them. Megan looked over at her HR partner like I'd spoiled the script, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of resistance. That wasn't the move. I'd be open, I continued, to a graceful transition plan. No drama, no press releases, just a structured handoff. But to ensure continuity, especially with current deliverables, I'd need to document the active workflows, not for me, for the new leadership. Megan exhaled, relieved. That sounds incredibly mature. Legacy behavior, I smiled. You know how we are. The next day, I asked for access to project archives, program logs, and all SOW reference files tied to GTD over the last 6 quarters. Said I needed them to build the transition packet. No one batted an eye. I even set up a clean SharePoint folder labeled GTD Retire Plan. It looked harmless. Dull, even. Like I was filing away old manuals before disappearing into early retirement. What I was actually doing was lining up a forensic trail. Every unauthorized edit Matt had made. Every deleted approval path. Every contradiction between what he told clients and what the contracts actually said. And oh, there were contradictions. He'd started sending out vision briefs to major clients, touting new service bundles, revised timelines, and accelerated onboarding windows. Except none of it was real. He promised a 48-hour turnaround time to a healthcare client whose contract explicitly stated a 5-day compliance buffer. He offered white-glove customization to a tech firm we hadn't even scoped beyond phase 1. It wasn't just ego anymore, it was exposure. Legal exposure. I screenshotted everything, logged every timestamp, made copies of every PDF that had been finalized without approval, and I started stringing them together into a summary document called Client Risk Map Noncompliant Comms, Matt Matheson. Subtle? No, but precise. And then I sent a memo, not to legal, not to HR, to the board secretary. It was short. Just 4 lines, hi, flagging for awareness, emerging inconsistencies between client communication and contracted obligations under the GTD portfolio. Have been asked to assist in transition planning, documenting current state. No action requested, FYI only. Monroe, I knew what that memo would do. The board secretary doesn't manage conflict. She doesn't discipline staff, she manages liability. When she gets an FYI like that, quiet, unemotional, attached to a clean file tree, she pulls her own logs. She checks who signed what, who authorized what, who owns what. I didn't need to say Matt screwed up. The files said it for me. Meanwhile, Matt kept strutting around like the man of the hour. He sent out a company-wide update with a selfie from his new strategy den, a glass cube he'd commandeered from an unused conference room. Captioned it, "Building Tomorrow's Culture, One Disruption at a Time." I didn't respond. I didn't roll my eyes. I just kept documenting. Every slide, every bullet point, every timestamp where his promises tangled themselves around contractual nooses, because they were watching now, not just legal, the board and Matt. He didn't even know his expiration date was already on the calendar. The meeting invite landed in my inbox like a pebble through stained glass. Subject, Decision Authority Review from Board Liaison Confidential Time, Friday, 10 o'clock a.m. Location, 14th floor executive conference room, no agenda attached. No pre-reads. Just the kind of ominous scheduling that makes executives sweat through their dry clean only. But I knew what it meant. Sandra had called the night before. Short call. Just 6 words, "You'll want to check your email," then she hung up. What Matt never understood and likely never took time to Google was that authority inside a corporation isn't just about titles or flowcharts. It's about documentation, delegation, board-acknowledged decision rights. And while he'd been busy holding TED Talk karaoke sessions in the break room, legal had been quietly combing through every policy, every approval chain, every signature that never showed up where it should have. Turns out Matt's hiring paperwork had a little problem. The COO's nephew had introduced him, sure, had even drafted a role description and floated it through People Ops. But no one ever finalized his authority scope. No official delegation memo. No board-signed decision charter. Nothing but a fancy job title stapled to a half-baked onboarding doc that looked like it had been assembled during a Red Bull binge. And that email, my email, the one he sent with "I don't care who you are or what you used to do," Sandra confirmed it. It had tripped 3 separate conduct violations the second it hit legal's inbox. Disrespect to legacy leadership. Misrepresentation of authority. Intent to diminish active stakeholders. All against code. All documented. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Someone in finance, God bless them, noticed that Matt had started approving expense reports for contractors that didn't exist in the vendor system. Sandra said the file read like a parody: $3,200 to Bethany Engagement Alignment, $5,100 for Tony Strategy Sync Sessions, both paid through marketing subcodes that had no oversight past his own approvals. So now it wasn't just internal confusion or compliance concerns, it was exposure risk, which is exactly what the board cares about, not drama, not egos, not someone's nephew's career ladder. Risk, and I could tell it was serious because when the invite went out, it didn't go to HR. It didn't even go to the COO, it went to legal, to finance, to procurement, and, quietly to me, I walked into the meeting 5 minutes early, wearing the same blazer I wore the day we closed the Axiom rollout. Nothing flashy, just clean, professional, solid. The room was quiet. No small talk, no bagels, just folders, tablets, silent, blinking cursors on note-taking apps. Sandra nodded at me as I sat down. She didn't smile, but she didn't need to. The general counsel opened with a single sentence. "We're here to clarify who exactly holds decision authority over the GTD portfolio and how recent events may have exposed us to reputational or contractual risk." Nobody said Matt's name. They didn't have to. They went over the approvals he bypassed, the SOs he signed solo, the expense reports he greenlit with zero oversight, the language he pushed to clients without routing through compliance. One by one, like dominoes, and then they pulled up the email, projected it onto the screen. Plain as day, "I don't care who you are or what you used to do." The room fell so still I could hear someone's phone buzz 3 chairs down. The general counsel tapped his pen against the table, looked around, then asked flatly, "Can someone confirm Mr. Matheson speaks for the company?" Silence. Not a single person responded, not the board liaison, not legal, not finance, not even the COO, who sat with his hands clasped too tightly in his lap. I didn't say a word, didn't gloat, didn't smirk. Just took a sip of my water and waited, because the thing about quiet power, it doesn't need a microphone. It just needs a microphone turned off for everyone else. And in that moment, every line Matt had blurred came into focus. The air in the room had the weight of an approaching storm, still, dense, full of things unsaid but already known. We were 15 minutes into the meeting and no one had made eye contact with Matt. That was because Matt wasn't in the room. Sandra had made sure of it. This was an executive-level internal exposure review, not a performance discussion. They weren't looking for explanations. They were looking for insulation, legal, financial, reputational, and Matt, he was the match left smoldering next to a gas leak. The general counsel sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up. He didn't posture, didn't raise his voice. He simply read, I don't care who you are or what you used to do, he began, eyes flicking down the page. The old way is gone. Please focus on support tasks and let leadership lead. He paused, then, without a word, flipped to the next email in the chain, mine. Hi team, he read aloud. Looping you in on a developing issue scope clarity and potential risk exposure with external partners. The COO was already shifting in his chair, his fingers twitching at the cuffs of his shirt. HR looked like she was trying to phase through the floor tiles, shrinking deeper with every sentence. The general counsel stopped reading and let the silence stretch, just long enough for discomfort to curdle into dread. Then came the line. Can someone confirm, he asked slowly, that Mr. Matheson was ever formally delegated authority to act on behalf of the company in contractually binding matters within the Global Training Division? No one answered. Not the COO, not the VP of HR, not even Megan, the HR partner who'd smiled her way through my transition planning last week. Her lips were pressed together so tightly she looked like she'd swallowed a paperclip. The general counsel turned to me. Calm, direct, Miss Monroe. Do you have any documentation that would help clarify the proper decision flow? I didn't say a word. I reached into my leather folder, pulled out a single document, and slid it across the polished table. It was the 2022 Compliance Audit Summary. Bookmarked, highlighted, signed by the board. Page 12 outlines stakeholder designations for the GTD portfolio, including a line that read, Final scope approval for all onboarding-related client engagements shall require review and sign-off by the Director of Global Training or an appointed delegate as confirmed by Board Resolution 17.4. And beneath that line, in legal black and white, Delegate, blank appointee. Ashley Monroe, the General Counsel, took one glance and nodded. This predates Mr. Matheson's hire. Yes, I said, my first word of the meeting. Board liaison closed her tablet slowly. And there's no record of that delegation ever being revised. No, I replied, there's not. Silence again, but not the awkward kind, the settling kind, the sound of clarity clicking into place, of consequences beginning to take shape. The COO tried to speak then, half a sentence, maybe less. We believed belief, the general counsel interrupted, is not governance. That shut him up. I leaned back in my chair, not triumphant, not smug, just done. My hands folded in my lap, my face neutral. Inside, I was volcanic, not with anger, but with knowing. With every time I'd been dismissed, minimized, told to be flexible while watching my work get sliced and renamed and sold back to clients without a scrap of care. They always think people like me will fold, that we're too quiet, too seasoned, too professional to light a match. They forget that we don't need fire when we've got paperwork. And today, every page spoke louder than I ever needed to. By Monday morning, Matt's name was gone from the org chart. Not deleted, just quietly buried under the bureaucratic tombstone known as administrative leave pending investigation. No all-hands announcement. No farewell bagels, just a muted update in the internal HR portal and a deactivated Slack handle. The cube he dubbed the strategy den was already half emptied. Someone from facilities wheeled out his branded water bottle, his ring light, and a stack of still shrink-wrapped productivity books. I passed the card on my way to the 14th floor. They'd asked to meet with me again. No calendar tricks this time, just a plain invite from the board liaison's assistant, review of transition options. Sandra met me outside the room with a tired smile and a steaming cup of the good coffee, not the brown sludge from the communal pot. They're not just here to thank you, she said. They're here to offer you the keys. Inside, the general counsel and two board members were waiting. We've reviewed your files, one of them said. We were impressed by your discretion and your accuracy. I gave a small nod. We'd like to formally offer you a new role, he continued, Director of Strategic Integrity for the GTD portfolio. Dual report to legal and the board. No layers, no ambiguity. It was everything I'd earned. Everything I deserved, every door that had been quietly locked over the years now swinging open with a gesture, and I turned it down. Respectfully, I said, I think I've done what I came to do. They blinked. I'm happy to consult for continuity, I added. Help onboard someone who understands how to protect what we built, but I'm not coming back full-time. Sandra didn't look surprised. See, the thing no one tells you about surviving the fire is that once you've walked through it, once you've stayed calm while the walls burned around you, you don't forget the heat. And you don't volunteer to stand there again just because someone finally noticed your value. I left the meeting with a contract in hand. Consultant status, flexible hours, high-impact project access, no direct reports, no nonsense. As I packed up my office quietly, methodically, I slipped that old file folder labeled GTD Retire Plan into my satchel. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like closure. And before I shut down my email for the last time, I opened my out-of-office settings. Typed one line, simple, clean, direct. Please contact legal for clarity on decision authority. No drama, no signature flourish, no inspirational quotes, just truth. Because Matt tried to erase me with one arrogant sentence. And in the end, I answered with one of my own. That's all it ever takes, really. One sentence, the right sentence. Sent at the right time to the right people. And now, I drink my coffee hot from home in peace. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.